Hello Goldweather, I'm sorry that this is turning into such a long series of videos, but as I said, I wrote it all down and it seemed more logical to say it out loud, but now I'm realising it takes a really long time to go through all this text. Okay, so historical accuracies in the Bible. The exact quote for anyone else who's been following this or has only just found this is my argument with Goldweather, and this comment of historical accuracies in the Bible, are you joking? You must have evidence for this if you want to be taken seriously. And as I noted just a moment ago in my previous video, you have to first off apply the same analysis that you do to the Bible as you do to every other mythological text. And if you have the same suspension of disbelief that you need to believe everything that happens in the Bible, then you can accept all the other mythological texts as well, just as accurately. For example, there's plenty of other texts which have just the same grounding in reality. But for some reason you don't believe those ones. Why do you believe this one? So we shall go through a few of them. Well, the first ones I would normally say, of it not being historically accurate, is the creation of the universe, which didn't happen in the actual order that is stated, and there's loads of other things which are coming from nothing to something, which is in the Bible, which isn't that unique. The Garden of Eden story, which we know is historically inaccurate, there's no evidence for it whatsoever, and the Noah's Ark story. However, since Goldenweather actually believes those three things, I can't use them because we've already gone over those, but for the rest of Christianity, that's a mythological story, and we shall go into the non-miraculous area of the Bible. So firstly, we're proven just simply on the fact that it contains mythological stories. Ignoring that fact, we're looking at the historical accuracies, and we'll go from there. So, first one I can think of, and I've found some extra things about, was the massacre of the innocents by Herod. And though it appears that he might have killed some of his family members, Joseph is the one that particularly mentions this, it's not substantiated through the different books whether or not he did actually kill all the infants. So it's not consistent within the Bible itself. This is one of the problems with the Bible. It's not consistent between its different texts, which is, funnily enough, what you would expect if it's lots of different people writing at different times to further their own aims and explain the religion to a particular group that they wish to convert. It seems to match that much more accurately, and there's no historical evidence that this ever happened. There's no mass graves of babies. There's no corroborating texts from locals or local historians or anything like that. It seems much more likely that he used this violence to give an excuse for Jesus and his family going into Egypt in an attempt to fulfill the prophetic claims about Jesus's, the previous claims in the Bible about Jesus's ancestry. That seems a much more likely explanation, since there's no actually corroborating evidence for anything that's stated there. Then there is this one I had to look up because I didn't know this one previously, which was, well, I knew about it but I hadn't got the exact facts, so please forgive me if I read this, which is the Gamaliel preaching in Act 5, which is to do with the sparing of the apostles. I haven't read the full text, but I'm aware that it has been dated in 435 CE. If you follow the chronology stated in the Bible, it would put it at 35 CE. However, it mentions two people, which is Theodas, who, however, would have existed in 44 to 46 CE, and Judas the Galilean, who would have existed in 6 to 7 CE. This is based on historical records of where the events referring to them actually happened, and Gamaliel wouldn't have actually known about these events because they hadn't happened yet if he had spoken in 35 CE, so it must have happened later. Therefore, doesn't match up chronologically with the time order of the Bible, which puts into question whether the chronology is accurate or whether things have been moved about a little bit to fit what exactly they wanted to say. Next story, Walls of Jericho. I'm going to have to speed up because I need to try and get this into one message. The Walls of Jericho, they're meant to have been destroyed by Joshua with the horns. However, the archaeological evidence indicates that it fell in 1550 BCE, which is about 50 years before Joshua is recorded to have actually been born in the Bible. So again, either they've got the chronology wrong, or more likely he got there, the walls were fallen down, and then they told people that we did it when it happened quite some time ago. The Gandrani swine drowning in the Sea of Galilee. I believe this is the story. I don't know which story this is actually. I thought it was the story about Jesus taking the devils out of the pigs and then running into the sea. If I'm correct in that one, please, I apologise if I have not got that one correct. That's the way I read it. I don't know. I'm not aware of any other swine going into the Sea of Galilee stories. This has the slight problem that the Gadrani is several kilometres away from the Sea of Galilee, and therefore the pigs would have had to run a very, very long way. And since it says that they actually saw them jump into the sea, they would have to have followed them for an awfully long time, and it merely indicates that the person's kind of plonked a story where they wanted it to be and didn't actually know about the geological inaccuracies of what they were saying, because they were written after the time and didn't necessarily know the area terribly well, which again seems more logical than, I don't know, I can't think of a logical explanation for why that would happen, apart from it's just a story. Mark's description of the travels of Jesus, and also the things in the Old Testament to do with, well, there's numerous stories of travelling through the desert, and they always seem to take a hell of a lot longer than is actually necessary. They whittle around for 40 years for what should have been about a 4-month crossing or that sort of thing. It never seems to mark up. I will admit, during this bit, I started to get bored because I realised that I could just keep going forever, so I've just touched on a few different points. Oh, one of the ones I did go on to, which in somewhat more depth, was the Roman census, which was meant to have been ordered by Augustus in the time of Quirinus. Importantly, it was meant to have happened, of course, in the time of Herod, because if Herod was not present, because Herod was meant to, at the time, have been trying to kill all the babies, which we've also proved there's no archaeological evidence for. But according to archaeological evidence of the death of Herod, he should have died about 10 years before this census ever happened, according to biblical records. Well, according to the only census that we have evidence ever happened at this time. However, that census, as far as we can tell, actually wasn't for the whole world. It was only one for Judea. And even if they did do this census, due to what we know about how Roman censuses work, they wouldn't have done a census of Herod's kingdom had he been alive, because that's just not how they did it. They would take taxes from them. He wasn't under complete Roman governorship. He was part of the empire, but he had to supply taxes, etc. He didn't need to actually take part in a census. There is also no Roman evidence for a world census in this sense. Also, there is no evidence that the Roman censuses take place in such a way that you have to return to your place of birth. None of the other censuses do this. No evidence that the census near that time did this, and it could cause complete chaos. It's far more likely that they did this to complete a prophecy that they felt was important to try and convert more Jews to Christianity. They felt that if they could get this prophecy to work and fudge it a little by changing the story, then perhaps they could get more people to believe. Whereas there's actually no physical evidence that it happened the way that they said. Got 1 minute left, so I'll just mention a couple of things, one of which is the numerous texts which were not included in the Bible, either for theological reasons or it didn't match with the flow of the text. And yeah, the fact that there's all these other texts, if you look at it, it's clearly part of lots of different texts that happens to be put together, and this match up with the disagreements between the different Gospels about what happened. How you decide, what do you believe that is divine intervention that made these other texts not included in the Bible? Yeah, I'm not quite sure how these other pieces, since they were put there by humans, are any less valid than the bits that are in the current Bible. And And also, of course, all the evidence which has been spouted a million times before, I'm not going to go into, is the fact that it wasn't written at the time by first-hand witness accounts. Bye-bye.